Hi guys, welcome to the Classicist Corner. I'm Kat, and this week I'm going to be talking about Odysseus in comic books. Now, I think we can all agree that comic books and superhero comics specifically are incredibly popular. And with popularity comes discussion, and part of the discussion on modern superheroes is the comparison between them and ancient heroes of mythology. And when I was doing my dissertation on Odysseus in pop culture, I wanted to see if there was any comparisons between Odysseus and any modern superhero. So with that in mind, I settled on probably one of the most popular superheroes of all time to bring up my comparison, and that's Batman. And I decided that Batman and Odysseus were pretty similar on maybe two major reasons, which is their intelligence, as both characters are categorised and they're categorised by their intelligence. They are both incredibly clever characters, especially compared to the other characters in their sort of respective fields. And I'm not saying that any other characters in both comic books or ancient mythology aren't clever. There are plenty of really clever characters, and indeed probably cleverer characters than those two, than Batman and Odysseus respectively. But it's those two who are really defined by their cleverness. They're also both incredibly rich, but really at this point that's not really much of a comparison because there are richer Greek kings than Odysseus. Odysseus isn't really characterised by his wealth in the same way Batman is, so that's not really a comparison. But again, they are both really rich, clever guys. But another reason why I felt they were very similar is that they are not super, if you will. Batman has no powers compared to his peers. Again, the joke is that his power is his wealth. But Odysseus also has no power, if you will. He has no divine parentage. He isn't a demigod or sort of potentially descended from demigods as much as his peers are, and he's not even particularly from a particularly interesting family line as say Menelaus and Atreus are. The Atrean line with Menelaus and his brother. So Agamemnon, yeah. So Odysseus and Batman don't really have that same super element to them that other heroes of their peers have. So then once I decided on this comparison, when I decided I was going to write about this comparison between the two characters, I needed a Batman text to work with. I already had the Odyssey for Odysseus, so I needed a Batman text to work with. And, well, that was quite a difficult thing to narrow that down because there's a lot of Batman. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of Batman. So with that, I did a little searching and I found Batman Odyssey. You know, it seemed quite fitting, you know, Batman Odyssey. And it was by it's a comic by a man called Neal Adams, and he worked extensively with DC. He's actually come up with a lot of the most iconic aspects of modern DC lineups. And he's worked on Batman, he's worked on Superman, he's worked on the Green Lantern, he's done a lot of work. And Batman Odyssey was meant to be his magnum opus. It was meant to be his greatest work, and he put forward that he wanted to use it to bring Batman back to his roots. A homecoming of character, if you will, a nostos of character. So I looked it up and I bought the comic and I read the comic, and I can fully report that it is bat-fracking insane. Like, it is literally incomprehensible. It's a madness. I actually have very little idea of actually what happened in it, and I studied it. Like, I can't even say what the clear plot is, so I'm actually going to try and do my best summary for you now. So there's Bruce Wayne as Batman, and he's telling this story to someone. We don't initially see who it is. So then he's telling this story, and then they're on a train, and then there's bat people like this, and then he's being mean to Robin for a bit, and then he gets shot at, then he's at a warehouse where there's a raid, and there's this kid, and then they're back on the train, and then there's Talia al Ghul, and then the kid dies because of the Riddler for some reason, and then there's Aquaman, and then there's the Joker, and then Nightwing, and then not Nightwing, and then Batwing turns up, and then they're underground, and then there's dinosaurs, and then there's these weird tribes of people, and then there's then Robin disappeared for a bit. Characters kind of disappear page to page and then turn up page to page, and suddenly characters who weren't there before are suddenly there and acting like they've been there the whole time, and it's a bit weird. And then there's this Cyclops looking thing, and then it turns out that and then more stuff happens that I don't really know what happens, and then it turns out that Batman has actually been telling this story to Superman the whole time. Yeah, it's not an easy read, to be honest. It's actually a little bit like reading an ancient text. Obviously it's a visual thing, it's pictures, it's a comic book, but it's actually a little bit like reading a translation that's not very good, if you know what I mean. It's yeah, so it's insane. It's kind of wants to make my head explode. And as for it being a homecoming of character for Batman, well, there's so many different types of homecoming characters, story arcs for Batman over so many different comics, and this is probably one of the weirder ones, but, well, I'll just leave that to people who can analyse comic books a lot better than I can, and who are maybe more familiar with Batman, as there probably is more people out there, but I would personally say not so great with the homecoming of character for Batman, but whatever. And, well, the thing is, though, even with all that insanity, it does warrant the Odyssey title, which might seem weird, but I think a lot of people underestimate just how weird the Odyssey as a text actually is. Especially books 9 to 12, which is Odysseus's narration, which does have a clear link to the comic book. In narratology, there's this idea of a primary narrative that's being told by a primary narrator, and then a secondary narrative, which is a story within a story. And in both cases, Batman Odyssey and The Odyssey, you have this secondary narration. You have Bruce Wayne as Batman telling this story to Superman, and then you have Odysseus telling his story to the Phoenicians. So there is this entrenched secondary narrative, and in both of those examples, the story they tell is insane. Odysseus' story is mad. Him going and seeing all these weird things and weird people and monsters and weird places, and the sun rising where it shouldn't and the sea going where it shouldn't be, and characters turn up where they shouldn't have been before. So that text is just a mad text. It is really weird. Again, you get different translations which make it seem less weird, the way it's translated, but the text is weird. So the fact that Batman Odyssey is insane in this secondary narrative works. And you obviously do get the more clear references. I mean, Talia al Ghul in the story, I think, has the role of Penelope and Circe and Calypso all in one. Sort of. Again, I still haven't quite worked out the story yet, so that's my interpretation at least. And when Robin turns up, there is a sort of coming of age-ish aspect with some of his dialogue, so you may get a Telemachus reference in there. There's also more clear lines which show Bruce is more of a cunning character in this iteration than others. There's a particular line when he says, I always tell the truth, ... when it suits me. So there is a little bit more Odysseus in this reference, in this instance of Batman, but still, I don't know. But there is some clear links there, and again, specifically with the secondary narrative aspect, we as the narratee or the reader, or we're not really the narratee, sort of, it's weird, but we as the reader of both of these cases can't really trust what's being said because there is this filter of the narratees. Now, the reason behind the secondary narratives is a bit complicated in this case, because when Odysseus is telling his story in books 9 to 12 of the Odyssey, it's to try and get the Phoenicians to give him a lift home, basically. He wants the Phoenicians to have a certain response to the weirdness he's saying. He wants them to say, oh, what a terrible time, oh, all these barbaric places, we're not going to be like that, we're going to get you home. Why Batman is telling Superman of this weirdness, I don't really know. I don't really know what's going on there. I don't really know the purpose of his narrative. But there is that strong secondary narrative aspect, and that is probably Batman Odyssey's closest link with the Odyssey. I know there are probably other comic books which might show Batman in a more Odyssean light, but like I said, there's so much Batman. And yeah, now if you guys have any thoughts on this, if any of you have read Batman Odyssey and actually know what happened in it, comment below, be like, oh, obviously this happened, you know, what are you talking about? Well, yeah, comment below. I would love to get some perspective on this. If you guys would like to hear any more comic books about Odysseus, I've got a couple of other. I even have this one here, which is the heavy metal Ulysses one, which is just as mad, to be honest, but it's good. That one's a bit more comprehensible. Just give me a comment below. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and I will be here next week with another video about Odysseus. So just one left and I'll get on with something else, and with that I will see you guys later. Okay, bye!